Sure. Thank you, Dave, first of all, for organizing this event. Andy, nice to meet you. Audience, good afternoon, good morning, or good late evening to everyone, wherever you're joining from. I believe this is open to public, not just the San Diego chapter, right?
Yeah, we made
So there
this
might.
to the public at large and even posted it to invite other ISACA members from other chapters in other regions as well.
Okay, great. The reason I span my hello to three different time zone is I'm based in Vancouver in Canada. So just wanted to make sure that people, wherever they're joining from, receive my greetings. So once again, thank you for joining us, everyone. Let me start with a quick background. Some of you might already be familiar when Dave and the rest of the leadership team at ISACA San Diego chapter had organized a comprehensive four workshop series focused on this topic earlier. But people who are joining this for the first time, getting to know me, I'm the founder and CEO at Teach Lab. My background is in data science, data management, applying data science technologies for large scale data management problems. When I say large scale, I see cybersecurity a large data management problem as well. Um, and in full disclosure, I am not a security or compliance or an audit expert like many of the ISACA chapter members. My background is in data science. I have a PhD. My formal training was um, applying data science principles for discovering analytics from various kinds of, banking applications, IoT, data management, and I did my postdoc after my PhD at the University of Alberta in Canada. I did a postdoc stint at the National University of Singapore in Singapore. And my career started with, working with biologists, studying the Canadian forest, helping them with pine beetle problem. And as a data scientist, my role was when this professor would fly the low flying planes or capture data from these forests through various modalities, cameras, pictures. We would mine that data to find these pine beetle specific problems, looking at carbon index and things like that. But back in 2010 or so, I moved to Singapore to work for the the National University there, National University of Singapore and US. And I ended up working with a specialized team that was focused on harbor management. So there was a project that was going on with Singapore Port Authority. And there, my role was to build tools and technologies to track these ships, which would help the port authorities with detection of illegal activities, shipping activities, and things like that. Um, so to keep my experiences short and focused on cybersecurity problems, I will just fast forward when I got introduced to the cybersecurity problems. Um, in my previous organization, I really wanted to come back to Canada after my stint at Singapore for family reasons. You know, my wife is from Vancouver, so and I was just looking for some opportunity or reason to come back. I was not focused on, my specialty, looking for a perfect matching. So I end up joining a very large enterprise where the role was about open source risk management. Open source was becoming a de facto industry standard. And I said, I have no idea what this team does, but there is an opportunity for me to go back to Canada and help the team with whatever I could do. And boy, that was a discovery of my lifetime. I got introduced to these cybersecurity issues because, as I said, open source had become a de facto industry standard. So when these organizations were using these open source, all the way from enterprise applications to military applications. I'm sure in F-16 there is some open source, in EVs or Tesla there are some open source. It's everywhere. And there were security issues, licensing issues, and whatnot. So I end up building technologies and tools that would help organizations with with cybersecurity issues, especially focused on vulnerabilities in open source projects and licensing issues and whatnot. And that was back in 2010, 11, 12 timeframe. And since then, I'm having fun, working on the compliance and audit experiences. And that's what I was saying. By training, I'm not, expert like many of our ISACA members in audit and compliance space. But, through these experiences, I've learned from colleagues like, from ISACA team members and other broader community about these topics. And it's just a blessing to, as a professional experience and as well as my academic training, to spend time solving these problems. And as we progress in this discussion, I'm very happy to share more experiences. I know this is about API topics, and I will share more experiences from that perspective. But again, just I wanted to share my story, my journey, and my experiences I had, and what's the connection with this meeting. So thank you
No,
again, Dave, for putting this together.
no, that's awesome. And I do see that several of you have mastered the art of using the webinar chat. We do want to make this be as interactive as possible. So as we're kind of going through, if you got any questions and stuff, please drop them in there, and we'll either answer them at the end or as we're going through, if it's reflective of the topic that we're talking about right at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll question. And this is really just to help us kind of understand where you're all coming at as we get ready to dive into these. So, yeah, and just looking at what is your experience with these. And Baljeet, are you able to see this as well in real time?
Yeah, I can see the question.
Okay. So it looks like it's a bit of a mix, anywhere from being brand new to understanding the understanding the basics is off to an early lead, but it's followed closely by working with them occasionally and being brand new. Some folks have them as a regular part of their job, but we have zero that feel that they specialize in API security or governance. So that is perfect. And that is kind of what we want to be able to touch on here. The questions that I've put together for us to kind of navigate through kind of correlate linearly time-wise. So we'll kind of start with history. And so the first question I had for you is, if we start at the beginning, APIs weren't always the center of the universe. Can you take a couple minutes and share with us how we got here?
Yeah, for sure. When I was sharing my experiences, perhaps I mentioned open source several times. Um, During that time frame itself, when I got introduced to the open source world, um, I started realizing it was not just the software, but also the services part. It was not necessarily that was the focus of my team at that point when we were solving these open source security and compliance issues. But what happened there was, because of my research instincts, I quickly realized that, as much as the software is important, the services, when I say services, I'm talking about services that become available over the internet, and APIs are very much like a web service, that is the focus here. And the way the way I got introduced to this topic was we would, as part of our due diligence process, I was also responsible for conducting technical due diligence for companies we would buy. And we knew the process, why the software security is important, but also what about these connections that these softwares are making when they are living in the cloud? Around the same time, cloud was taking in a big way. AWS and Salesforce had proven this model very successfully. They have grown to challenge very large enterprises in this space, not just but from a data perspective, enterprises were becoming more comfortable, building their private clouds, but ultimately things were moving into the cloud. And that was the time I started paying attention to the APIs. And just to share with you, APIs were not new by that time. I was digging deeper inside that. Of course, as a student, being in academia for so long, we were taking and teaching courses around software engineering and all that, but never focused on the different aspects that we know now. And what we realized was these connections that these softwares make being into the cloud, we were seeing new kinds of issues. And APIs existed even before that, decades, 6 decades or so, early 70s, 60s, when companies like IBM, Microsoft, they were figuring out a way to put a shared infrastructure for parallel computing and distributed computing. They needed to build systems where they could internally share these resources. And that's where the application programming interface, or APIs as a short, were becoming very useful technology to embed within their internal systems to share these resources. Interface could be just sharing a memory or a device or whatever it is. But I think the real fun started when these services, which APIs are, were also becoming available over the internet. Not just internal APIs, but also something that is available over the internet as a web service. So web APIs. So not all APIs are web APIs. Some could still be internal, sharing different resources. But my focus shifted toward web APIs because of the software living into the cloud. And that's where I realized that, this problem is going to become a huge problem because, the companies needed to not just connect with their own services, but also third-party services. And APIs were the way they were connecting with. So there were compliance issues, there were security issues. And unfortunately, industry's focus was not on that particular aspect. And so that's a brief history that I learned in the last 10, 15 years or so, and be part of that history as well. And then we started focusing on, in my previous organization at Synopsys and Black Duck, where I was the head of R&D for that open source component I mentioned. When it got acquired, then I decided that this problem needs to be solved. And that's where my journey started with TeachLab as a founder, focused on APIs and not looking at a very, very large cybersecurity issues, but just the APIs were becoming such an important and integral part of digital ecosystem. I decided this is where I want to spend the rest of my life and career.
No, dude, appreciate you sharing that. And the next question, I think I already know the answer, but the if I just read you the question, we can probably rephrase it. But the question is, at what point did you start noticing that API growth was outpacing API governance? And I guess really, did you ever see where it didn't? Uh,
Many times. As a matter of fact, depending on who I was talking to, for example, when I was
Mhm.
talking to my lawyer friends within those enterprises, they would say, Baljit, I don't know how to manage the legal issues with APIs because there is no set license like software. There is Apache, MIT, but with APIs which are more dynamic in nature, there is no set license. These are terms of services and whatnot. And when I would talk to the the product teams, they said, oh, we need to get this product out. And to speed up the process, they would build connectors with different services where they don't need to reinvent the wheel. Either integrating enterprise application with, banks or enterprise applications or other third parties through these APIs. They had different issues. And when I would talk to the security folks, they would say, okay, I need to get this out, but I have 50 different APIs. I'm not sure if we have tested them through different benchmarks that we need to be compliant with. Um, so definitely the scale at which these applications needed to integrate APIs, there was no governance in place. So like 10 years ago, it had already outpaced the connectedness that these softwares needed with respect to API integrations, and governance was not in place. There was governance, there were open source offices to manage the software aspect, but the services aspect was still evolving. And unfortunately, the current state of art is some organizations are still struggling to put a process in place for API governance. And as we proceed in this, I'm happy to share more thoughts on that. Why this sprawling API sprawling has become a huge issue for enterprises.
No, dude, that's perfect. And that can take us right into the next is how would you describe and man, I learned so much of this from you. But how would you describe the current state of APIs in the modern digital ecosystem?
So let me divide this question into two parts. One is why, and the other one is how. So the why part is why these APIs have become such an important instrument for connectivity and monetization, because companies are sitting on huge amounts of data. Of course, internally, they have figured out a way to monetize the way we want to. But this data that they sit on has a lot of value for the external world, right? And as you can imagine, we have, no matter how big the organization is, the innovation cycle has some, scalability issues and also the caps in terms of how much you can continue to invent. So companies have taken the strategy of building these APIs that are publicly facing so that they can grow communities around it, developer communities, so that they can invent new applications. And so is true not only for enterprises that are looking at monetization, but look at our government policies. Either it's the US government or Canadian government or the Indian government, they have open data policies. And one way to open up their data is through APIs, right? So they want, either it's a Department of Veteran Affairs or if it's the biological sciences department. I mean, you can name it.
Sure.
So they have open data policies through which where they have built these APIs so that the internal ecosystem can grow, build new applications, invent new solutions. So that is happening at the same time. So that's what is happening. The why part. How part is, there are standards, there are specifications, there are technologies, because you might be hearing REST APIs, SOAP APIs, you might be hearing GraphQL, you might be hearing other kinds of technologies that are evolving alongside, because each company is unique, their ecosystem is unique, their technologies are unique. So they are inventing along the way different technologies to uh, instantiate the how part, how they want to be connected, how secure they want to be connected. And there is a friction between these why and how. And there are policies. I know companies want to go to the market faster. They want to monetize. They want to be integrated with their partners and ecosystem. Their customers are asking, I don't like your dashboard. Just give me an API so that I can integrate within my workflow. I like your services, but we don't need your heavy GUI or dashboard. We just need an API that we can embed within our processes. So um, because of these frictions between these different communities, At the same time, it has opened up new challenges and opportunities for us as a community to solve these problems and reinvent faster and bring these solutions faster. So I don't know if this answered your question or not, but this is how the evolution is happening within this API space, the how part and the what part. Uh, but
No, I think that's some fantastic context to kind of help us understand how we got where we are. Just as a quick ad hoc question for folks that are attending and may not know, what percentage, and you helped me learn this, but if you could just share what percentage of the data that flows through the internet flows through APIs?
yeah, so that's a very pointed question. Depending on which company you talk to, they have their own results. Recently, several companies published the results. So some estimated it's 83%, some estimate 75%, depending on the ecosystem they live in. But in general, I agree to all those results in their own specific context. The majority of the data that is flowing through the internet now is through web APIs, and you
Hmm.
can see why. You can see why. Uh, the APIs are designed for machine-to-machine communication, right? Technically speaking, right? It's not that you want to build an API so that human can call that API and read the results. It's not. That's not the purpose. The purpose is, can I integrate my software with eBay or Amazon Web Services or with the Amazon marketplaces to fetch the product information, to fetch the inventory details so that I can build my workflow. Or the banks are building open APIs so that they can create an ecosystem around their products and services. So there is another research we did, and this was specific to the US and not to the world level, right? The numbers I quoted to the world level, but in the US, we try to see each industry, for example, the energy sector or the service sector, public sector, or the insurance and fintech sector, and we looked at the API use cases. And then through that process, we were able to quantify what were the dollar values or what was the GDP contribution by these API ecosystem, right? And believe it or not, but we were able to uh, quantify. Of course, this is subject to, I mean, somebody can say, how can you quantify this way? But with all due respect to those critiques, we were able to demonstrate that each of these industries, the underlying infrastructure APIs, are empowering the entire economy around these systems. You look at the energy sector, all the lines and pipelines and the instruments that are in the field, plus the exploration of energy that happens in the different spaces, the connectedness happen through APIs. And then when these analytics become available, the integration with all the different other services becomes available through APIs. Now look at the new industry, the AI industry that is evolving. Either it's Chinese companies or the American companies or the Indian companies, everybody's trying to build their AI agents, robots for various industries. Uh, the the most recent examples are these generative AIs, where we have this Q&A capabilities that we are embedding with our robotics, customer services and whatnot. And guess what? Don't be surprised. These integrations are through APIs, right? So the $1 trillion economy that is evolving around the AI engines, the delivery of those intelligence depend on APIs. So in a way, you can quantify that the next wave of innovation is happening in this ecosystem through APIs because of these AI agents.
Yeah, yeah, and as we work through, we'll get a chance to kind of talk about where things are going, and I think that that's going to be phenomenal for us to chat on. Um, as more of a layperson in some of this, just to kind of put this in scope, if we look at the evolution of mobile devices, mobile phones, iPads, and things like that, and the functionality and the apps and things that they bring to the table, how much of that would we be able to do if we did not have APIs?
Very difficult to answer, but very important question. And that this is something everybody can relate immediately. I
Hmm.
invite our members who are attending this chat, just open up your phones and see how many apps they have. Each of those apps, if not thousands, they are connected with hundreds of APIs built by the same organizations or the third-party vendors, that they are connected with, whether applications or if a banker has given you mobile app, if they have an OCR applications through which they're scanning your checks to deposit, bank is not building those OCR technologies, and the way they are integrating through a third party is through APIs, right? So the input is your check image, and the output is the numbers they read and deposit some money. All this is happening through APIs, right? Um, if I wish I had just like on our food packets, we have labels,
Right.
carbohydrates, fat, this much percentage. If you have that bill of material for your apps, you would see hundreds and perhaps thousands of APIs. And believe me, I'm not making this up. You didn't ask me, but I'll share this story.
Oh, please.
In one of the previous experiences, and this is live, this is real. I'm not just telling a story. But we bought this company, and this company was a SaaS company, and I was part of the team that was conducting the due diligence. And believe it, one product. I'm not talking about the entire company. I'm not talking about for a very large ecosystem, there could be hundreds and thousands of applications. And I'm talking just one of those applications. 5,000 different API integrations. 5,000.
Wow.
And there are different numbers for various industries. Gartner has published various results recently. If you look at fintech, then how many on average APIs that companies have. So the point I'm trying to make, Dave, is um, our apps, our personal lives, all the way from social media to enterprise applications, the API is a lifeline or the bloodline of these digital applications. And
Hmm.
they are empowering applications. And I don't have a number because it's a very research question. For example, if somebody wants to estimate the number of APIs for mobile applications in a specific industry, the numbers would be different than for a fintech application. That number would be different for space exploration specific APIs or defense related APIs. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer, but all I can tell you is a lot.
That was the number I was looking for, was a lot. Yeah, not a hard number because I know it's changing and we're really living in a very evolving environment. But I just wanted to touch on that to try and help give people an understanding or a perspective how pervasive these have become in our daily lives, whether it's work or personal or family. Um, that does tie in, and we'll get to Andy's question there in just a sec. But for what you just shared and the consensus answer of a lot, how aware are organizations of their actual API footprint?
An honest answer is they don't know. They
No,
can pretend, and I'm speaking to a lot of those prospects. If
sure.
they and I invite my colleagues who are on this call uh, to go back to their teams and ask this simple question, guys, do we know all our APIs across all our applications and ecosystem? An honest answer will be we don't know. And there is a reason why. And I'm not trying to make fun of this situation. What I'm
Sure.
saying is that is the state of how we have evolved in this digital ecosystem. What's happening is companies are not only using open source, so their developers download a GitHub library, or 80 to 90% of these applications use open source. Some of them are completely open source, right? And they're buying companies, they're acquiring assets. Their partners are asking for integrations. They are building their own APIs for integrations with their ecosystem. And a comprehensive uh, story around this is they have no idea in many cases what are these APIs, which is internal, what is external. And if you ask them, do we have a consolidated inventory list of our APIs? An honest answer would be, we don't know.
Yeah, and I didn't mean put the question out there as like a gotcha. I just really kind of wanted to shed some light to everybody here in understanding how immature the security and governance of APIs are in an environment where they are this pervasive already, because that truly is the landscape that we're, whether we're auditors, security people, whoever, that we understand that is the water that we're kind of swimming through on all of that. So that was perfect. If you can, Baljeet, if you have the chat open, we do have a couple of questions. We can see if those make sense to answer now or push towards the end, and then right after those, we'll do the next poll question. But is there any way for the average person to see the APIs used by their mobile applications?
Not a straightforward way, but if you, but by the way, thank you, Andy, for the question. Great question. Not a straightforward way, but yes, there are. If you're a bit familiar with technology, then a simple way is to scan these applications that you're using. Sometimes these companies put their open source in GitHub or other repositories. So, there is a way for you to scan these applications and find the inventory. And there's no guarantee that you may be able to discover all of them. But again, that's a good start. So yes, there is a way, but it's a bit technical, and you need to use certain tools to discover that. They will a standard application either in Android marketplace or in Apple Store, they would not reveal the inventory of those APIs as a disclosure.
Gotcha.
There's no law that shifts the gear to another topic. There is no law requiring them to do so. But if
Right.
you're dealing with feds, if you're dealing with feds with the recent presidential orders, now if you're transacting with feds, they are demanding this. They're
Okay.
demanding this now. But in a private, in general enterprises, depending on the relationship you have with your organizations, if you can ask, but it's not voluntarily told.
Sure. Sure. No, it makes sense. And I think that that kind of helps tie in. Part of what we want to communicate is where APIs are within the overall maturity of what we do, whether as auditors, security, or developers and everything. I'm going to go ahead, Olivia, we're going to get to your question in just a moment. I just want to launch the next poll question so I don't fall too far behind. Um, but how confident do you feel in your organization's API visibility? And let's see what we've got here. Um, some visibility is off to the lead, followed by we know we have gaps, but we aren't sure how big those are. Um, to very little visibility. And then, but we do have three people attending that have said that they have full visibility into APIs. And with the amount of attendees we have, Baljeet, ironically, that is pretty statistically consistent. of how many do have that degree of an understanding. Um, so
Yeah. Dave, if you allow me, I think Olivia asked a very interesting and also very important question.
go for it.
How should we inventorize or how should we catalog our APIs? I mean, I don't want to interrupt you with your questions, but when ready, I would like to answer that question
No,
if you
no,
allow.
go ahead. I mean, I have questions. I know there's a couple of things I do want to make sure we take time to touch on, but really, we want to be here for everybody that's attending to try and help as best as possible. So please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Olivia, great question. Very important question. So how do we manage our inventory? I would start by saying that treat your APIs as products. APIs are no different than products, especially if it's a third-party product or an API upon which your application depends upon. You really need to treat who's the vendor. And the reason why they're no different than a product, because look at the functionalities these APIs provide, technical functionalities, and of course the business support they extend. You could have an API that does translation. There are tons of Google APIs that can convert English to French or convert a text into an audio or whatnot, right? So the input is one medium, the output is another medium. So really depends on what these APIs are doing. Even if it is a simple API as much as providing you just weather information. But again, it's end of the day, it's a functionality that you have to respect as a product, right? So that's the first part. My recommendation is use them as a product. Once you start to treat your APIs as products, a lot of things fall in place, right? Because you already have processes, you already have product management in place, you already have certain people who specialize in this kind of governance and process. So once you start treating your APIs as products, a lot of the governance aspect fall into place. Now, let me tell you, you cannot treat every single API the same way, right? For example, if it is simply an API that is giving you inventory information, product inventory, I mean, there is no sensitive information, there is no PII, there is no FII, then you can very much, the policies around managing that product is different. Versus if there is an API that contains PII, or even if you look at some of the AI-driven decision making that these APIs do, you need to have different kinds of policies, right? So as far as the inventory is concerned, you must have a pane of glass where you can see these APIs. What's the API, what it does, what's the category, who's the vendor, what's the risk assessment around that vendor, what's your dependence. So there's a whole lot of things you need to do. But then the policies around it, you may need to have a separate workflow to manage those policies, especially uh, if you may also have your own internal APIs upon which your partner ecosystem depends upon. So the answer to your question is treat your APIs as a SaaS product. They are very much like SaaS. They are a service somewhere in the cloud upon which you depend, your product and services depend upon, and then build the processes around it. But my other recommendation would be don't treat all your APIs the same way. Partly because you know the the technology underlying could be different, how they're authenticated, how they're authorized, are they prone to injection attacks? So you need to have different kinds of policy to treat them. But at the same time, you may have very sensitive APIs that they're dealing with uh, data that requires more governance from simply the legal points of view, data sovereignty, data governance point of view. So you need to have different mechanisms and the processes and tools in place to manage them differently. But again, you need to have inventory.
Awesome.
So, Olivia, I hope that answered your question. But again, I'm happy to take any follow-up on that.
Yeah, well, we do have, and then I think what we'll do, because like I said, I want to take the time to make sure we're addressing or answering questions that people are asking. So, if you see Farah's question there. We can go ahead and uh, well, thinking about third-party risk assessments, is it value added to ask questions about their APIs and software, or would this create another challenge, like if it's worth doing business with this vendor? The only relatable question I have seen is, do you regularly conduct security assessment with your third party?
Okay, so it's a loaded question, and I believe it has at least two parts. One is third-party risk assessment on these APIs. Do they add value? And the second one is, should we conduct this regularly security assessments? I would say the answer to both parts is yes. Um, it is worth conducting third-party risk assessment on those APIs. If these vendors are already providing products and services to you, um, you may not necessarily reinvent the wheel for a special kind of assessment. You may need to ask them to disclose their API inventory or simply software bill of material or a API bill of material. So you need to ask them and embed that as part of your due diligence process. Should you conduct a security assessment on third-party APIs? It really depends who these third parties are and what kind of security test you can conduct against them. Let me give you a practical example. If you are consuming Google APIs in your ecosystem, Google is not going to like it if you are doing injection tests against their APIs, right? They might even block your access if you start to do injection test against Google APIs because you were very enthusiastic to see whether you can if there is any security gap in their APIs. So depending on who the vendor is, you can trust them that they have done everything they can to make sure that their APIs are secure upon which you can depend upon. But there is no guarantee, Farah. Simply because, in the past, if you look at the history, Facebook APIs were compromised. As a matter of fact, open APIs were compromised. The Tesla, Twitter APIs, or you name it, all kinds of APIs have been compromised. And as a matter of fact, a few years ago, Gartner published this report. APIs are the main attack surface today because you need connectedness, you need intelligence, and both those components are connected with APIs. So as you add more APIs into your ecosystem, you are increasing your attack surface. The bubble that you have is increasing. But unfortunately, because these are third-party APIs that you did not build, there is not a lot you can do with them beside conducting the due diligence on the vendor itself, whether this is a reliable vendor or not. Now, let me give you another example. So one was Google. Let's say this is a Joe developer, right? But Joe developer has given you a very important API upon which your technical functionality depends upon, right? So depending on nothing against this Joe developer, but again, it could be a startup upon which you depend upon to have some sort of integration that brings intelligence to your ecosystem. You may have a bit more leverage, what kind of tests you can conduct, what kind of assessments you can demand from them. But again, there is no guarantee when you have third-party APIs. And the difficult part is these APIs are very dynamic in nature, right? It's not like a software that you downloaded, embedded in your library, unless until you change the source code, things would not change. But APIs are very much a tool that you can invoke by just writing a few lines of code, right? And the entire engineering aspect is built by the third party and how they handle it, how their pipelines are, where they are provisioning the data in which your inputs are going and the results are coming back to you. So there are a lot of details around the API, third-party APIs upon which you depend, and there are certain things you can do. There are certain things, unfortunately, you may not be able to do from a risk assessment perspective.
Yeah. Hey, if I can add, just because from listening to you and what you shared earlier, and the quality of the questions that are coming through, Farah, the better an understanding you have of the criticality of that data that is flowing through will help you determine or understand better. Um, how critical that vendor is, and getting an understanding, and as you do your due diligence of them, because that will tie into, like you were discussing earlier, Baljeet, of if it introduces regulatory issues, or if it's something of less critical or less regulated data as well. So I wanted to throw that in there. I am going to I want to put out the last poll question, and then we can pivot a little bit. But I also saw here. I'm going to hit launch. And I saw Ron's note that the poll questions were flashing quickly. Just if other people are experiencing that, please just drop it in the chat, because really all we're doing was I created these in advance and leveraging the technology Zoom gives us to hit launch. But if others are experiencing an issue, that would be great to know and appreciate it. So, um, uh, this question wanted to touch on what area of API security or governance would you like to learn more about? And really, I've had the opportunity to have a awesome friendship and relationship with Baljeet going back about 3 years now, and every time I learn more and more. So I know uh, there will be more, and we can kind of take some of this information and hopefully be able to leverage that in a future chat in that way. And on that note, risk scoring and prioritization has a small lead over legal, regulatory, or compliance considerations. And then there's also discovering and inventorying all APIs. Uh, with that, what I was hoping to do for the remaining time that we have, Baljeet, is kind of, I mean, yes, at Security Studio Academy, we have collaborated with you to create an API uh, security and governance foundations course, which covers a lot of this in more detail. And if anybody's interested, Andy, if you can just drop your email in the chat. The good-looking man that's been muted through most of this is our account exec, and he can talk to you about it, share just really what we're trying to cover in spirit, and any promotions and stuff like that that we've got available that we can extend to you. But I didn't want to dive right into the course itself as much as in the course, there's a really solid body of knowledge that Baljeet has shared that does get into the history, security, regulations, and governance of these. But when you take that body of knowledge, we're kind of saying, what are you going to do with it? And it includes the elevated license within your platform. So I thought what I thought would be, and but there also is a community license or uh, membership that somebody can sign up for that's available at no cost. So what I thought we could do, Baljeet, if you're cool with it, is just take the last few minutes to kind of give a top level of the Tease Lab platform and what it offers, and how some people, whether it's enthusiasts or professionals, could expect to get and learn from using your platform.
Yeah, sure, Dave. Let me start with the community aspect. So one problem that we wanted to solve, and this was purely from an educational point of view, uh, almost 6, 7 years ago, we started realizing that what if we create a repository or knowledge base of APIs where people can simply go learn about different types of APIs. Who are these vendors? What type of APIs they have built? What these APIs do? Before we took that effort, there were already some repositories publicly available. One of them was, if I'm not if I'm not wrong, it was called Programmable Web. 15 years ago or so, it was there, but now I think they shut it down. The good part about that particular effort was it was listing all the APIs that were they could find that were available, but it was a static list. This is the vendor, this is the API, and so on and so forth. We wanted to do more than that. We wanted to build something which is more dynamic, which is more educational, and provides the richness into this ecosystem. So the very first effort that I want everybody to benefit from this is, and there is no cost to that. There is no course requirement for that. There is nothing needed. You just need to go to the platform to do this. Look at that inventory that we have discovered. So we have built a technology that is bringing all those pieces of information from different vendors. Of course, whatever is publicly available. So we have indexed by this time world's largest repository of APIs into TeachLab API Discovery Platform. So you can go to that, discover those APIs, find who the vendors are, look at the details. But then there are also certain things that are not publicly available, partly because we do not want some enthusiasts to go beyond a certain point where they can start attacking those APIs. Because, as I said, this is not just a static list, this is a dynamic list. So you can do something with those APIs. They expect from people who are interested in this course. So that's the first part, Dave. Nothing is needed. They can go explore this. But once they decide that this is a journey we want to go deeper and enrich our experiences more than what we can see just publicly available, then there are different aspects. They can do the discovery on their applications, then they can do the discovery in their networks. Once they discover, that's just the first point, right? Finding your APIs is the first point. That's not the ultimate result. Once you find them, then you want to see, okay, what's secure, what's not secure, what's the licensing issues around it, what kind of data they might be transacting, and so on and so forth. Where they might be hosting if you're using APIs just off the shelf. You may have certain SLAs that require the vendors to to host an API specifically for you, but then there could be just publicly available off the shelf solutions as well. So they can take this entire journey within our platform, from discovery to assessment to security to governance. And of course, if they want to go beyond that, then there are other commercial aspects I can talk about maybe another session. Does that answer question, or you want me to go a little bit more deeper on this, Dave?
No, no, I didn't want to come out here and be like, hey, this is what's going on. It's totally a part of everything that we do every day, and the percentage of organizations that are properly managing them or understanding what they have is very, very low, and all and not have a path forward for people to kind of understand where there are options to take next steps. And like you and I touched on, the community version will get somebody access into the platform. You can start getting some experience, you can start learning some things. And if you find that it's helpful, or you want to go deeper into a dive, then you can consider the course. We can talk to you about that. But that's how it kind of plays out. So no, I think that's perfect, and I just wanted to let people know that resources like what you offer are available. So
If I
no,
can,
that's perfect. Thank you. Go ahead. Yeah,
if
please.
I can add just one more thought into this, uh, various enterprises have built their API marketplaces, so you can actually go learn, from those vendors. So they have their own API portals. Sometimes they have their own API playbooks and things like that. But what is interesting about the discovery platform that we have given access to the community members is we have indexed all those into one single place. And all of this information is categorized according to industry, according to locations, according to the vendors. So this gives them a more enriched information in one single place, right? So I just wanted to
Mhm.
add this thought. Our members can still go learn. Let's say, for example, they want to learn about Google APIs. They can go to Google portal and they have a very elaborated dashboard, which is publicly available. They can learn about those APIs. If some people are technical, they can play with those APIs as well. And they can do the same thing for other vendors, but there are hundreds and thousands of vendors, right? So
Right.
practically, this is not possible for our members and colleagues, right? So that was the main reason we wanted to index this together in one single platform where where the learning is easier, more enriching, as well as opens up more thought process when they see a collective piece of information.
No, thank you. Dude, and we are coming up on the hour, so I will throw out there if anybody has any last moment questions. Um, and we do have a couple, so maybe we can dive into those quickly and then we'll look to wrap. Uh, how often do developers leave in an API, forget to remove them as their products move to go live?
Yeah, Olivia is asking very interesting questions.
Yes, she
Uh, I don't have the answer, like a number answer, but this happens all the time, and this is one of the problems that OWASP has identified, inventory management. So oftentimes, when developers are building a solution internally, they forget. Uh, we have often heard about people hard coding their passwords and then they forget when they go live.
sure.
So same is happening with APIs as well. You build for internal testing purposes or whatever reasons, but then you forget. A lot of the applications end up being in GitHub or somewhere else with your partner, and that opens up a door for a risk perspective. Yes, so that happens very commonly.
Oh, and yeah, and two high fives or a high 10 to Nathan for realizing that he's in a safe space here, as he says that it happens every time he codes. So thank
Thanks
you,
for being
brother.
honest, Nathan.
Yeah, yeah. So we got one left from Farah again. Correct me if I'm wrong. APIs are called by humans with an IP address. It requires a URL with keys associated with it that can be PII for an organization. Does that make all APIs treated as posing risk?
It really depends on what this API does. I've seen APIs which does not require authentication. So they just want you to make a call. Maybe in the backend they're tracking your IP. That's possible. That's correct. So PI is involved. But then also let's talk about APIs where Google gives you a single sign-on authenticate API just to authenticate. There are a lot of applications where you can use Gmail ID to authenticate to access a platform. Then in that case, yes, they are storing your personal information, right? So even if it is an API that is just authenticating you, has sometimes PI information. But again, if you open up that API, what it does, then there might be some more data that might be sensitive to you. For example, if it's a medical imaging company or a company that does insurance premiums or does the natural language understanding of their insurance policy. So the input is a document, which could be a private information, and output is the assessment. Think about ChatGPT API. So very much that information that you have inputted to that API is your private information. But do you know where that vendor is storing those documents? They could store in the US, they could store anywhere else. for cost-cutting reasons. So you need to know all those details, right? In many cases, when you have a one-to-one agreement, then of course, then you can demand certain things you want them to be compliant with. But of course, if you're using a weather API from a vendor who, they may be in the US registered company, but they may be hosting their server in Bangladesh. I've seen that case. I'm not just making this up for
Sure.
cost-cutting reasons. AWS instance in Bangladesh or in some other Asian country, even in India or China. So uh, because that's the nature of these APIs, right? So when you invoke them, as you said, Farah, you're right. So you have just a simple URI with a few lines of code that invokes the API call. But then where the data is going and where the data is coming back to you is out of your control. So these are the real questions from a governance point that Dave was talking about that companies are trying to catch up with.
Sure. Sure. No, dude, that fantastic questions. I really, really appreciate it. When folks open up, because I know that much more of what we're sharing is related to what they're curious about. We have gone over time, which I'm really good at doing, and I want to be respectful to everybody's time. Is there anything you'd like to share as a closing thought, Baljit? And then we can look to wrap.
What I would like to say in closing is uh, I give full credits to all of you, whoever has joined today, uh, to be brave enough to understand about this topic. If you had some knowledge or limited knowledge, you have already taken the first step to understand this. So kudos to you. Um, then moving forward, if what you've learned today, you want to continue to build upon this, that's why we build this course, so that we can all learn from each other and continue to build. And I can tell you in full honesty, as much as you will learn from this course, I'm going to learn from you during this course, because you will break things, you will ask questions, you will do things that I've not thought through. And that's why we love this topic so much, because this is evolving much faster than what we can imagine. The agentic world has just started. 20 years ago, when I was a PhD student, AI was in laboratories, but now it is in the forefront, right? So
Mm.
we will see a lot of new issues, lot of new compliance aspects that we have not solved yet. So again, congratulations to you for taking the first step, attending this chat session with us. I look forward to continue this journey with you through this course and beyond that course as well. That's my closing remark, Dave.
No, that's awesome. And if anybody has any questions, Andy dropped his email in there. I'll drop mine. Feel free to reach out. And we are often in contact with Baljit, and we can relay any questions that you have, because really our passion is to just raise awareness on this and help people and organizations help themselves. So with that, go ahead and say thank you to everybody. Dude, there are a lot of platitudes complimenting you and thanking you for being with us today and sharing your time and your knowledge, which we greatly appreciate. We'll have you back soon, and I look forward to it. So, with that, we'll say thank you to everybody and wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everybody.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.